Welcome back to the Rocky Road podcast. We're so glad that you joined us again today. I am very excited to share our new guest. Her name is Tess Scott, and I'm going to have her introduce herself here in just a moment. But first, I just wanted to let you know that Kristen is not with me today. She is just doing her own podcast with someone else, and I'm doing one with our lovely guest today that I'm very excited to share about. And just so a reminder to our listeners that you could follow us on Instagram at the Rocky Road Pod. You can also send us an email with any stories, recommendations, or feedback to us here at the Rocky Road Pod at gmail.com. So we're very excited about that. So without further ado, let's get started chatting with our new guest today. So good morning, Tess. It's morning here. It's morning for you too.
Yeah, it's morning here too.
So introduce yourself. Tell us who you are. Tell us about yourself, just a high level before we get into some details.
Sure. My name is Tess Scott. I'm a wife, a mom of 8 boys, an encourager of women. I live in Sarnia, Ontario, in Canada. So we were just talking about that's a little bit further south than some parts of Michigan. So really not that far north, but in Ontario for sure, in Canada. And yeah, I just love to spend my life encouraging women of all ages. That's what I'm called to do.
And that's perfect. That's also what I feel called to do in different areas and in different ways. But I know I read through a lot of your story and your bio, and I've got some things I can relate to you on. And I think just your variety of your life and everything that you've had to go through has made it relatable to honestly any woman. I would say there's some piece of your story I feel like every woman can relate to. So I would love for you to just share with me today anything that you really want to. I did read part of your book already, and I thought it was great. And it was really cool. So your book is called Listen, Sister, and I would love for you to share more about that too. But really just tell me, what is your story? First of all, the fact that you have 8 boys, no girls.
No girls. I know. I like to keep things all the same, as if I had anything to do with that, as if I had any choices there at all. So our family is a blended family. Mm-hmm. I've been married a few times, and so I came into this marriage with 5 boys. I had to think about that. What are all the numbers? 4 boys, and we adopted a boy who's special needs.
Okay.
Fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. And then I married Rick, who has 2 boys, and which are like right in the midst of my boys, same ages. And then we had 1 more together. So that was an even 8. Seems like a nice even number, I guess. Yeah.
So what's the age range of them now?
So right now, my oldest son is 37, which blows my mind. And our youngest son is 19. He's still at home going to college in our town. And he's I say he's like on the edge of the nest, and I'm like coming up behind him and yelling like, whoa, hoping that off you go, And people say to me, like, you're just going to be so sad when all your kids are moved out. And I think, no, I won't. Like, I want them to be doing well, but this has been a long time of having kids. I've never, like, for 37 years, I've lived with children in my home. So
absolutely,
it's okay to move on. I have 9 grandchildren, so they can take turns coming.
And, that'll keep you busy. Your home will never be quiet. So.
Yeah, no, the house is never quiet. And I wouldn't want it to be. Like, I love them all and I want them all to be, to be doing well, but I'm fine to go on to the next stage of life.
Sure. That makes sense too, because you've spent such a large portion of your life parenting that it's time for something new. And I know for me, I think it's funny because a lot of people always, so I have, for you to know, I have an almost 6-year-old daughter. So I have a girl. So it's very different than 8 boys. But everyone would always tell me you're going to miss every stage when she was a baby and an infant and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. I have not missed one stage yet. I've enjoyed them all. I've gotten out of them what I can, but there's nothing that I really want to go back to. I just love, I'm so excited to see really what God does with her in the future moving forward, that I don't want to go back to diapers and to potty training. I just that does not sound fun to me.
That sounds kind of crazy, actually. And I think you're on the, I think that that makes a lot of sense. What you're saying, you're on the right track because we also don't want to be just looking forward to the next stage. You know, sometimes we get like, oh man, I can't wait till she's out of diapers, or I can't wait till she's walking, or I can't wait till she's whatever stage. And then we don't enjoy what they're in right now. And
Hmm.
some of them are, you know, not the most fun stage. I can't say potty training was my favorite stage, but there's still other things about that age that are really great.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. Like it just
Hmm.
enjoying the stage they're in and looking forward to what's coming next.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
definitely enjoy where she's at now. She's innocent enough that she doesn't really know the harsh reality of the world, but she's independent enough that she can put her shoes on and buckle herself in the car and the normal things. So I'm like, oh, this is just such a precious little innocent stage before, the realities of the
Yeah.
world we live in start to come into her world and see that. So, but I am looking forward to the time where she can understand how time is uh,
Mhm.
caused. Like, what is it 1 minute? What is an hour? So that if I say we have to leave in 5 minutes, she knows we don't, you can't just
Yeah.
like turn the TV on and start watching a TV show or something. But
Right. Right.
anyway, so yeah, so back to that. So you have a blended family, large age range, lots of grandkids. So you have a busy family. So are you from Canada originally?
Yeah. I was raised on a farm that's about half an hour from where I live right now. I've
Okay.
always lived in this area. All my kids live within half an hour. My oldest son bought my parents' farm.
Oh,
So my
wow.
grandchildren sleep in the bedroom that I slept in, which is weird for them because they can't believe I was ever a child, because I'm so
Right.
old.
Doesn't,
Um,
yeah, you were never a child.
that makes no sense, Grammy. And yeah, so all of our kids are fairly close, like within half an hour, and we get together often with them. We play. We're a big board game family, so they come
Awesome.
over and play, Settlers of Catan and all the board games. And yeah, we don't have all of them together at the same time very often
Hmm.
because that's a lot of. That's I think 23 people now.
Yeah,
So
that's a
that's
lot.
our house is not that big,
Sure.
but we do it at Christmas. We have everybody together on the 29th,
Hmm.
and on the farm, my son has a big drive shed. I don't know if you know what that is, but like a big drive shed that has a furnace in it, and we have
Sure.
it's a big area. And then in the summertime, this is so exciting. Okay, so in the summertime, one day outside, we have like our backyard with the pool and everything, and we have a minute to win it championship. Okay,
Wow. You have
yes,
enough people for that.
is very serious. There's teams, there's a trophy, and part of it, like some of the games are in the pool, some are not, and all the ages. And we play different games, every year. And yeah, it's intense. It's a lot. Yeah, there's
Wow.
some talking to each other. There's
But I bet that gets pretty competitive too.
that's the thing. Yes, there is some trash talking happening. Yes, it gets very
Yeah, of
competitive.
course.
It's so fun, and the kids talk about it for a long time. Like the grandkids help plan which games, and yeah, it's very
Sure.
fun. So at least I know I'll have everybody together because that gets difficult when we have people um, that are shift workers and all kinds of variables like that. People go on holidays and stuff, but I call it
Absolutely.
very early in the spring. Okay, I call this day, and this is the day it's going to be. So you better be there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Those are the benefits of having a large family. I come from a relatively small family,
Mhm.
so we don't have a lot of things like that. But that's so fun. That's such a great memory too for all the grandkids and for your kids to just have every year and to have something to look forward to. That's really cool. That's
Yeah.
awesome. And so, yeah, I do remember I read that very first excerpt in your book about the farm, growing up on the farm with the hay field. So, tell me a little bit more about just your childhood, like how you grew up, and did you have a big family yourself? And just that. I really liked your story. First of all, before you get into that, one of my favorite things about your book is how bite sized it is to read. They almost
Mhm.
remind me of like a devotional type book where it's just one little story. It took me 5 minutes to read one story, and you get something, and it makes you think for a little while. So it's really one of those books that, yeah, you could sit down and read it cover to cover, but it's also just one that you can read one day at a time, just 5 minutes of your day, and think about something. And I really appreciate that as a mom and as a single parent, just not having tons of extra time. That's just really nice. So I really do like that. But tell me more about your childhood and growing up on the farm and just really, I mean, you learned something at that young age that you put in your
Mhm.
book, which is amazing. So
Well, yeah. Well, actually, I don't know that I learned it at that age. I think
that's true.
well, I
Yeah.
did learn some things, but yeah. So just about the book, I think I wanted it to be small, bite-sized stories for that exact reason, because we don't have time, especially with young kids, to sit and read for hours. I'm sure you don't. I
Mhm.
remember.
Yeah.
But I've had a lot of women say that they leave it in the bathroom, and I'm not offended at all. And just pick it up when you have 5 minutes, read one story while the kids are banging on the door, set it back down.
Yeah.
Or in
People
the
can hide in the bathroom too. It doesn't mean you're using it.
Oh, exactly. You hide there. I know. I know. I had food in there. Like, it was a good place. I locked the door. Anywhere you can
Yeah.
lock the door is a good
Yeah.
place. Yeah. I'm not from, well, I don't know. It depends on what you call a big family, I guess. I'm not from a huge family. I'm the oldest of four kids. I have three little brothers. So the only girl, but my mom is an only child, but my dad was from a family of 12 kids.
Oh,
So
wow.
he had a big farm family. And so I have 35 first cousins on my dad's side. So when we
Wow.
got together, it was this freak show that I live in now. But that was right. We did all the things like I do with my kids now, and tons of games and hanging out. And yeah, it was really fun. We lived on a farm we were the only one on our side road. So it was a couple miles. It was about a mile and a half into town. So the nearest kids to play with, let's say, would be, I don't know, a mile away, I guess. Nobody on our road. And we had to be older before we were allowed to bike down there,
Hmm.
So you were at the mercy of your parents. And so I had to hang out with my little brothers, who were so annoying. I have to tell you, just, yeah, it wasn't, once I got a little bit older, I did not want to hang out with them anymore. But we had so much fun. We went exploring in the bush, and just, I don't know, we just had our own time outside. We got booted outside a lot to hang out. There
Sure.
wasn't there wasn't social media. We weren't allowed to just be in the house watching TV or anything, but we made our own fun. And I think back then parents didn't really entertain their children. Right.
Hmm.
My parents didn't worry about that. They wanted us to be safe and out of their hair. So that's what we did. And we had chores and
Hmm.
stuff like that. But we just made our own fun outside out of ridiculous things like piling wood and I don't know, making forts in the grass and the hay mow and all.
Sure.
And when our friends would come from town, I mean, I want to live in town. This is why I was so jealous of my friends in town, because they had sidewalks and paved roads so they could ride their bike.
Mm.
Like, then 10 speeds had like these tiny little narrow wheels, tires, and you couldn't
Sure.
go in the gravel with them. So it wasn't really great for riding bikes out there. And my
Hmm.
friends in town could roller skate, they could ride bikes and skateboards. And like, I'm on a gravel road. I can't do any of those things. So and they could see their friends easily by just walking down the street. So I
Sure.
was kind of jealous of that. And then they would come to our house and like ride the pony, and they thought that I had the best life. So sometimes it's what
Yeah.
you think. Other people have it better than you, and they think that you have it better than them.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think I always I would say I grew up because I have a brother, but he's significantly older than me. And so I don't have a huge family. And I always wanted a big family. And then my first marriage was a big family. And so I saw both sides of the coin there. And it really is just a difference in perspective of what you think is better or greener on one side. And I just think, honestly, with any family situation, there are pros and cons to everything, even
Yeah.
if you have I'm divorced, so I have a separate home, so there are, you have a split family, but my daughter's dad and I do better separated. So it's weird, but if we would have stayed married, it would have been worse. So there's pros and cons to it. And so there's pros and cons to every type of situation and every type of family life and every type of upbringing. If you grew up in a rural area or if you grew up closer to a city, so it's really just looking at it from that perspective. But it seems like you have a lot of memories from growing up just based on
Yeah.
your book and some of the things that you wrote about, which is really cool. So after you grew up, then what did you do past that? Like your work life, growing up, did you go to college? Just tell me kind of where you ended up and how you got to really where you are now.
Yeah, that's a long story because I'm really um, so I was planning to go to college, thinking about going to college, got accepted in college, and then got pregnant. So did not go to college because in the 80s, that's not, when in the 80s when you got pregnant, you got married, And so
Mhm.
I did. And I think we were married for about a year and a half or something like that at the age of 19. It was
Mhm.
not, it wasn't a great idea. I was definitely not mature enough for that. And so that ended in divorce. I did like jobs around town, like worked at the dry cleaner and that kind of thing, worked at a restaurant and
Mhm.
waitress and stuff like that. Got remarried again, and we were married for 10 years. That marriage ended. And in that marriage, I had three more kids and adopted our special needs son. And
Mhm.
then after that, then I married Rick, who had two kids. So that's how we have this big blended family.
Mhm.
And during that time, I started really like following the Lord. Like I knew God, but I didn't have a great close relationship with God.
Mhm.
And so I felt like um, now my life was for God. Like I was on the right track. I was just so close to God and, doing my Bible study and making
Mhm.
the right decisions. And not that this is about me, because honestly it isn't, but I just felt really confident in my faith.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
yeah.
Mhm.
And then my husband told me that he didn't love me anymore and he was leaving. And I can tell you, Mandy, that just like it was from out of nowhere and I couldn't believe it. And I was begging God to not let it happen. I mean, I've
Mhm.
been through this too many times before. I don't want this to happen to my kids. I don't want to be alone again. There's the rejection part of it. Like
Mhm.
all the reasons like any woman would feel in this situation. And I say that I spent a long time with my face in the green carpet of my bedroom, um, begging and trying to figure this all out for God so that he would know how to do it the best way that I thought
Mhm.
it should happen.
Right, of course.
I can line things up and then send him an email and tell him how to do it.
Yeah.
And yet he didn't. So he didn't save that marriage, and my husband left, and there's still some like shame in the church or
Oh,
in
yeah.
society.
Mhm.
I don't know. I felt it. Maybe it was just the enemy, but I felt ashamed. Like this is my third divorce, three.
Mhm.
Like I'm not even a celebrity. Okay, three
Mhm.
divorces, and yet it happened. And during that time when he left and I was on my own, like that was the closest I've ever been to God because I had nothing else.
Yeah.
Like I was
Mhm.
the lowest I've ever been. And then we got divorced. And we were divorced for 3 years and God reconciled our marriage and we got remarried.
That's
Like
amazing.
it is amazing. And it doesn't
Mhm.
happen for everybody. I'm not saying that, but it was the best for us because God does what's best for us.
Sure.
And that had to happen that way. That was
Mhm.
the way it had to happen. Like you said, it's different for everyone, but this is the way it
Mhm.
had to happen for us. And so I'm thankful for that and for all
Yeah.
the things that we both learned during that time and for how my kids got to see that, you
Sure.
know? And then, so we got married on September 9th of 2016. And then on September 30th, I was diagnosed with breast cancer.
Mm.
So the first year of our marriage, our magical honeymoon year of all
Mhm.
those things, became the year of mastectomy and chemo and radiation and Herceptin
Wow.
and trips and all of that.
Sure.
So life is not always the way we think it's going to be, or ever. Maybe it's never. I don't know.
Yeah, amen to that.
Yeah, yeah. But God got me through it, and we learned things. And so when I found that, when I let me say that differently, when I realized that God wanted me to share my story, I didn't know what that would look like. I'm not a writer. Like I said, I didn't go to college or university. I'm not a journalist. I don't know. But
Mhm.
I knew God was asking me to share my story somehow, right?
Mhm.
Like I
Mhm.
would like if God would either, well, I don't know if I want him to say it in his voice because that would probably knock me down, but give me an email or a text, right? And then I would
Sure,
write my
yeah.
story that that's what he wants me to do. But like you're reading and then you feel really strongly this is it, and then you go to church and the pastor talks about it and you're like, okay, this is it. And then on the way home, you're listening to the radio and a song comes on and it says, Tess, listen, so you
Mhm.
just know that you know that you know that you know.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how it was. And but I didn't know what it would look like. And so I kind of said, yeah, eventually. Like, yeah, I'll share my story. Sure. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Mhm.
I was working in a job I loved at a college, at a fire school, every girl's dream. And I'm just joking. No, that's such a funny joke if you worked there. And It was a job I loved though. And so I didn't want to quit. And I was getting ready for work one day and putting my makeup on, doing my hair and all that. And I looked in the mirror and my smile was crooked. And I'll make this just the story shorter, but I ended up
Mhm.
going to emerge and they kept me for 3 days and ran all these tests thinking maybe I was having a stroke. My words were all garbled. I couldn't speak and my eyes
Mhm.
were blurry and it was very scary.
Hmm.
And at the end of 3 days, they sent me home and told me that it was not a stroke, but a TIA.
Okay. Yeah.
And so, like a little warning, a temporary disruption in the blood flow to your brain.
Right.
And I said to Rick, my husband, I said, "Wow, I am so thankful that this was a false alarm."
Mhm.
And he looked at me and he said, "Is it, Tess? Is it a false alarm? Because maybe it's a real alarm because you know what God wants you to do and
Hmm.
you're not doing it. You're dragging your feet. And all of us only have so many days on
Mhm.
this earth. It's a
Mhm.
finite number. We don't know what it is. Like, this is like a warning to
Sure.
you. It might be 10 years or 20 years and it might be 2 weeks. So you need to
Mhm.
get to work on what you're being asked to do. And yeah, so I came home. I quit my job and came home and started doing this full time. And
Hmm.
as a side note, I hate when he's right, but but he was right. So
Yeah.
yeah, so it was pretty obvious that that's what I was supposed to do, whatever that would look like. So what it
Sure.
looked like was starting to write a book, and I got a book contract in about 3 months, which is amazing. And
Mhm.
yeah, and then started speaking to women and encouraging them, and it looks different every day, but I
Sure.
don't look back.
Yeah, and that's amazing too that God can take your story that you said earlier that you felt so broken and so shameful in the church through everything that you had gone through, and then
Mhm.
turn that into a story that He wants people to share and wants people to read and be encouraged through that. And I want to go back to what you had said about how you felt through the church.
Mhm.
For me, when I was separated, I went through a very similar separation to you. From what you said, where it was just like one day it was I'm done, and we've since repaired things and mended because we have a little one. We have to work together, and I'm very very grateful for where we are now. But at the same time, in that moment when you have that darkness that you feel that you just can't get out of, you're like, how did my life just flip upside down in the course of 24 hours, 1 week, 1 month? And for me too, I always say that I had the biggest and most closest moments with the Lord on the floor of my parents' basement in their house when I was going through everything. I had moved home and my carpet was blue. That I had the same thing. But yeah, and I felt that same feeling that you were talking about through the church. And I want to just talk about that for a few minutes because I know there's a lot of church hurt out there. There's a lot of people that go through really difficult situations. And for me in that moment, I felt that. I felt, my husband was gone. And I think for me, over the course of the years that I've been single, I've broken so many stereotypes and judgments in myself that how I see other people. One of the hardest things for me was to accept the fact that I was a single parent. That was so hard for me. I did not want to say I'm a single mom, and the big D word of divorce was I couldn't even speak that word for months. It was how could I ever be a Christian woman in a church, married, but now divorced and a single mom of for me at the time, I had a 2-year-old. So
Mhm.
she was so small. And, I was 28 and I'm like, I'm not even 30 yet. And I feel like a huge failure. And there were people in the church that did encourage me, but I think just my own self felt that cloud around myself. And I still do at times where people look at me as you're a divorced single woman. Oh, what happened? And it was totally out of my control. I mean, there was absolutely nothing more I could have done to change anything. So, tell me a little bit about like an encouragement that you found, or maybe somebody that you met along the way that was just helpful in that season. You said you were the closest to the Lord
Yeah.
in this state where other people were looking at you in this very different way. So, just tell me a little bit more about that.
And I wonder if they were, or I wonder if I thought they were. I mean, some
Exactly.
people were, but I think part of the problem is that we're not always transparent or vulnerable about truthfulness about ourselves. You
Sure.
know, I don't want to look like somebody. I mean, this would never happen, but I don't want to look like somebody who has it all together. As I say that, I think nobody would ever say, "There's Tess Scott. She has it all together." But that is funny. But I don't want the church to be a place where people think I would never fit in there because those are a bunch of perfect people. Because that
Sure.
is the exact opposite. We are
Hmm.
not perfect people. Like Jesus did not come to talk to the perfect people, right?
Sure.
He came for the hurting people.
Yeah.
And that's who we are, every single one of us. And if we're pretending that we're not, we're just pretending, and that's not helping anybody.
Hmm.
So the best thing that can happen is that we're all vulnerable and real about what's really going on in our lives and encouraging each other. And I mean, I say that because I think we need to have groups of friends, like a small group of friends that we can be 100% honest with about what we're going through and the things we're struggling with. I
Hmm.
don't mean put that on the church prayer group. Like I don't mean like have to
Sure.
announce that from the pulpit, but I mean I want my best friends to know, okay, I'm really struggling with whatever this is, right?
Sure.
So that they know how to pray for me and how to encourage me and watch out for me and hold me accountable and all
Hmm.
those things. So we need to live in community that way.
Hmm.
And that wasn't happening before for me.
Hmm.
Happens for other people, I'm sure, but it wasn't happening for me. And so that allowed me to make big mistakes in my life in the past, like huge mistakes, because I was pretending everything was okay. You know, how
Mm.
are you? I'm fine. How are you? I'm fine. We're all fine. We're not all fine. We're
Yeah.
not all fine. We
Hmm.
walk around saying we're all fine. We're not fine, you know?
Yeah.
So, and once we start actually sharing, and I think part of the reason that we don't share is because we fear rejection,
Mm. Yeah.
um, and because maybe we think that everybody else has everything all together, you know,
Hmm.
so I could never be myself. Like, what if I said, um, you know what? I think I drink too much wine. I can't wait every day to have a couple glasses of wine, and maybe it's becoming a problem. If I was going to say that, what would people think about me, or how would they treat me? Or what if I said, you know, maybe I'm addicted to porn, or I'm struggling with whatever it is. Or what if I said, and this is even maybe easier to understand, what if I said at work, there's a new guy and he's
Mm.
really nice. And I know that he's married
Mm.
or I'm married, but we're just going to be friends.
Hmm.
Like, I want you to say that to me
Sure.
because then I'm going to hold you accountable. You know,
Hmm.
don't tell me that you're going to choose which shirt you're wearing to work because it makes you look the best because you know that guy's working. That's a problem.
Hmm.
But if we're not speaking these words to someone who is going to point us to God, who's going to keep us accountable, then that's very dangerous ground.
Hmm.
And the enemy works really hard in those areas. And that's happened to me in my life. And
Hmm.
so I want to be able to come to groups of women in my church or wherever it is, to groups of women and just say, okay, it's not just people who don't know God, who are lost and who we're speaking to. I'm talking to women who know God, who love Jesus, who are
Hmm.
making mistakes,
Yeah.
because none of us are perfect and we're just all struggling in different ways. And we need
Hmm.
to be real and vulnerable and encourage each other.
Hmm.
So we don't think, wow, it's just me. I'm like the black sheep and everybody else has these perfect lives.
Sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's easy to feel in a Christian environment. And I know I grew up Lutheran, and I've told my story in a previous episodes, so people can listen to the whole thing. But just having really the difference, I've experienced different churches in different areas, in honestly, in different countries, and just different types of people. And I just think, man, it is so hard to walk into a church and to be vulnerable. It
Hmm.
is like, I don't know if it's like for us an American thing. I'm sure it's in Canada as well, where it's just you walk into these churches and people seem to have it all together.
Mm.
And then the more you get to know somebody, the more you realize they don't.
Yeah.
and and for me, I'm like the first to admit I do not have it all together. Like I struggle with a lot of things, and I'm pretty open about it. And so but there's parts of my life too where I still don't really want to talk about them. But similar to you, like I made a lot of really immature, um, just really uneducated decisions, I would say, growing up. And after, I was talking to somebody recently, like when you become 18, you think, oh, I'm an adult, I have it all together. And I'm like, I think I have it less together at almost, 30, I'm almost 31. And so it's just so different with, the way, and I've been through a lot in the last decade of my life. But I just think it's like this, um, perception that you need, you're 18, you're an adult, you make your own decisions. It's like, what is the difference between being 17 and a half and being 18? What really is that difference? There's really not much of a difference there. And, you go out, you fly. And for me, like, I always wanted to go back and encourage women that are in their young 20s, because for me, I didn't have really any kind of guidance in that area at that age. So similar to you, just encouraging people, like, find who you are and don't just jump right into the expectations of what the world is saying, whether that's get married or go to college or get married, have kids. The pattern can look different. Of course, there's a biblical standard that we want to try to follow and work hard too, but life happens. We live in this broken world. And, I've experienced Christians to be some of the absolute most wonderful, best people that I've met. And I've experienced Christians that are some of the absolute worst people that I've ever met, and everything in between. And so it is hard to know that balance and to find that community that you can be 100% vulnerable with that person, when you can have this variety of people and you don't really know what's behind a person if you're not
Mhm.
honest. And so I've made friends along my lifetime that I thought were really great friends, only to turn against me. And I've also really held back on making friends with other people because there was something
Mhm.
about them, or maybe they were a little different, or something that I just couldn't really, I wasn't gravitating towards that person over many, many years. And, to find out only that they're a close friend of mine or become a best friend.
Mhm.
Um, and so I think it's really just breaking that thought of what does a good friend look like and what does, physically look like appearance wise, but also just how do they act? How do they treat you? And how can you build that trust in a person and build that community that you're looking for? And that can be really hard to do, as I'm sure
Yeah.
you've experienced.
Yeah. And it takes time. Like you said, you have to build. Building takes time.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to be vulnerable and open and trusting, and having the expectation that, sure, just because you're a Christian doesn't mean you're not human. So you're going
Mm-hmm.
to sometimes fail, and we're sometimes going to hurt each other, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we're going to push through that and apologize and have forgiveness and build on that relationship, so that it's
Sure.
that kind of a strong relationship where we can go deep with those
Mm-hmm.
other people, in a small group. I'm not saying like a group of 30 people, right? Like a
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
small,
Yeah.
two or three people that we can really share, deeply, our life deeply with.
Sure.
And I think that that's really important. And those people don't even have to be the same age or the same stage of life as you. So
Mm.
one of the people that was this woman who was the woman who was probably the most influential woman in my life, um, I grew to know as Aunt Bet. That was her
Mm-hmm.
name. And she just passed away. She just went to be with Jesus in February, and she was
Mm.
97. And
Wow.
she spoke into more women's lives than anyone you could ever imagine.
Mm.
And she was still driving the week that she died, by the way. And she
Wow.
still led Bible study every Tuesday, no matter what.
Wow.
Like for 60 years, we figured out that she was doing that. It's crazy. She was amazing, and
Mm.
amazing woman of God. But she would share her life, like, um, mistakes she had made,
Sure.
right? Talk honestly
Mm-hmm.
about them and stories, and encouraged me and listened and prayed with me and prayed for me. And then she would call me up during the week and say, "Hey, how are you making out with that thing that we decided you were going to do this week?" And I was like, I don't want to do that.
Accountability, right?
Accountability. That's exactly it. She held me accountable. And now I can come beside a young woman with little kids who is up to her eyeballs in the freak show of life. And I can say, yeah, it's not going to be forever. I remember
Mm-hmm.
potty training. I remember this, and you're doing a good job, and you're being a good mom. And,
Mm-hmm.
and she can share vulnerably with me the things she's struggling with, and I can do that for her. And that's mentoring, right? And that's biblical. I
Absolutely.
mean, that's and that maybe that doesn't look like the people that you know that you'll be in relationship with, but I believe that if you ask, that those people are there somewhere.
Hmm.
And it's really different
Absolutely.
people in different seasons of life for
Hmm.
that, but it's really important. And I think it's more difficult now, um, for women, because in like years ago when I was a young mom, like a long, long, long time ago, um, we I connected with my friends. We connected with other women in person, right? Or on the
Hmm.
phone. And I could hear their kids like yelling in the background. And I knew that that woman's life is not perfect, just like
Sure.
mine, right? I went to her
Hmm.
house. I saw her dishes in the sink, whatever it was.
Absolutely. Hmm.
But now I think that a lot of young women connect with each other on social.
Hmm.
And not that you don't have in-person friends, but if you see continually these pictures of these perfect lives, like if you're looking at that house on Instagram, you know, that big, beautiful house with the wreath on the door and the pumpkin on the porch, and you
Hmm.
think that that woman's life is perfect and you know your life isn't, I want to tell you that if you walk in her house unannounced and you go to her living room, there is laundry on her couch, just like your house.
Yeah.
That's real life.
Hmm.
So we need to be real with each other.
Hmm.
I think it's so important to not have this thought that everyone else has this perfect life and I don't. So it's expectations. It's going
Sure.
to be messy. If you have if you have kids and your life and your house looks like you have a kid, good. It should. You
Yeah.
do. Like that's reality.
Right.
That's
Hmm.
reality,
I'd
right?
be almost concerned if you went to someone's house with kids and it didn't look like you had a kid. What do your
Yeah.
kids do?
Where is this child locked away? Yeah, we don't
Right.
want that. No.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's
It is true. Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
it's true. It's a huge reality. And
Mm-hmm.
even just before I had my daughter too, my house was still not perfect. I worked full time. My husband worked full time at the time, he was military, so that's full time plus. And so it was just my house was always, there was dust somewhere, there was dog hair somewhere, there were dishes in the sink, and it is the reality of just the world that we live in. And I think having that understanding and having the open heart and the open mind to know that someone doesn't have it all together, everyone doesn't have it all together.
Mm-hmm.
um, and just be open to that. And that, that is a hard thing to learn for people that see those perfect expectations that are shared on social media. I know I've gone through that, my fair share, of thinking someone's life was perfect or that they were great, only to find out when you get to know that person that they cry themselves to sleep at night, or that
Mm-hmm.
they're dealing with a health challenge, or their marriage is falling apart or something like that. You just really don't know behind the pictures of social media. And even for me, I was actually archiving some pictures on my Instagram, my personal one, recently, and I'm like, oh, I remember posting that picture. That was not a good day, but here we are smiling, and we posted a picture that it was, it looked like a great day, and I remember it being not a good day.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a really good reality of just that realization. And I like what you were saying too about mentorship, where I've had this too in my stage of life, being almost 31 now. So it's I personally like to have women support me that are at significantly older than me. I think there's huge, like you said, there's an immense amount of wisdom in somebody in their 90s and in their 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just a huge piece there. But also people that are just in like the next stage of life. But also for me, then it's really on me to give back to somebody who's later, maybe in their early 20s, or a teenager that's coming up, and having that. We all experience things. We all have some kind of reality check at some point in our lives that we learn from and can share things from. So just what I've been through, being able to encourage women that are in their 20s has been a blessing to me. As I also just really look up to people that are in their 40s and 50s and 60s and 80s and 90s, and what can I learn from you? How can I learn something from someone else that can be that I can learn and not make that mistake,
Yeah.
or realize it, like you said, when you were talking about the TIA, like maybe this is an alarm, almost like a flag, so if
Mhm.
it's something someone went through when they were in their 40s or 50s, and I'm now, that happens to me in 30s, of like, oh, this came up, or this happened at work, or this happened here, whatever, fill in the blank. Oh, I remember somebody said this can happen. And even just building a toolbox to know how to work
Mhm.
through something that's difficult, and
Mhm.
just see the encouragement for people on the other side. Like, it's a blessing for me to just get to meet you, knowing you're on the other side of, 3 marriages and blended family and cancer survivor. Like, that's huge to learn and admire somebody, not in an idolization kind of way, but just to just look up to somebody. Like, what you've been through and what you've gone through is an encouragement to me, just knowing that part of your story. That my life is very clearly not perfect, and it's easy to feel like a failure when you go through something difficult like a divorce, or something, whether it's a medical thing or a friendship breakup or something. It's like, oh
Yeah.
man, I failed again. And it doesn't always have to be that way. God uses our stories in some way, somehow.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the biggest things that I learned about finding hope is to remember what God has done in the past.
Hmm.
So what I do is I journal. I'm a big journaler, and I talk about that a lot, and people roll their eyes a lot when I say it. So I make fun of them, but it's
There's
a
something about a hand, pen, and paper
yeah.
that is so therapeutic. I do the same thing.
It is, and I have a 5-year journal. So when I wrote today, I saw what happened yesterday a year ago in the year
Oh,
before.
wow.
So that's
Okay.
really cool because then I can say, wow, on this day last year, I was really concerned that my husband was going to lose his job. And so we were praying that and just begging God, and it looked so dismal, and he didn't. Right. And
Mm,
God came through. And it's just reminding yourself over and over, like, what God was faithful. Look what we've been through. Look what happened. Look how things worked out. And sometimes it's not the way we thought, but then it turns
yeah.
around and it's like, oh, wow, that's not what I was asking for. God did something different. It was better.
Hmm.
Right. So it's just being reminded continually, like he's good. He's good. He's good. He's good.
Hmm.
And for me, I just love that. It's not a big long page of writing. It's like 4 sentences or something, just what's going
Sure.
on and what's happening. And so I always encourage women to do that.
Hmm.
And that's a good way to remind
Yeah.
yourself that there's
I
hope.
I think it's great too, and in writing. And I know I did not journal for a very long time because I felt like if I didn't journal every day, I was a failure.
Mhm.
And I had to get myself past that wall of, it's okay if you journal once a month. you know,
Yeah.
you're journaling, and it's okay if I go through seasons where I journal every single day for 3 weeks and then nothing for 4 months, and it's like,
Yeah.
I I just didn't need it, or life got busy, and it's like, that's okay. I mean, it's
Yeah.
wonderful if you can do it every day, but
Mhm.
just to have like that grace on yourself of like, it's okay if life gets a little busy, or if you're so busy, working with somebody else or mentoring, or something, and you don't
Mhm.
get to it. It's really okay, but it
Yeah.
is really helpful. And I also,
Absolutely.
one of the things that I do on the first of the year, I write down 10 prayers that I just kind of pray through in the month of December. I try to wrap up the year. It's a turn of a year. It's a new canvas for the new year. And so I just really spend some time, more specifically right after Christmas is over, for that gap week between Christmas and New Year's. And then
Mhm.
when New Year's comes, I journal on the first and I write down 10 prayers. I just feel like God's leaning on me, and then some of them are selfish prayers. Like, I
Mhm.
really would love to spend New Year's in another country. That's like still one of my prayers,
Mhm.
just like have a New Year's celebration somewhere else. So I consider that more of a selfish, like, God, I would love for you to do this for me. But there's other ones that I feel God leading me to. And it's amazing by the end of the year. I don't look at them. And then at the end of the year or midway through the year, I check in and just see how they are. And it's amazing how God answers them. And like you said, in ways that you were not expecting,
Yeah. I
in
love
ways that are very different, sometimes not better, not worse, just different.
Yeah.
I can't even really compare them, but to just see the faithfulness of God over the years that I've had, and can look back, and sometimes he doesn't answer that prayer in that calendar year, but maybe it's the following calendar year. So I just
Mhm.
leave a little blank line and I write in the month and the year and the date or something, or the event that prayer was answered in. And then I can go back and see it, and be reminded exactly what you're saying. And
Yeah.
I just love that. I love having
Me too.
that reminder all the time that God is good. And that leads perfectly into the song that you shared with me, that you picked. So, as the Rocky Road podcast, we are, both myself and Kristen, are music therapists by nature. That's our background. That's what our degrees are in. So that's what we we just always connect with music. We both have led worship for years. We both have sung in choirs and all kinds of musical things that we have. So we have a playlist. So any of our listeners are able to listen to our playlist on Spotify. Each person that we get to talk to and have them share their story gives us a song. We put it on this playlist, and so everyone can listen to it. It is super eclectic. We're just reminding our listeners, as always, there's anything from a classical boys choir piece to we have like rap music on there. We've got Cheeseburger in Paradise, like really fun things as well. And it's just really that song that connects somebody to their story and that they want to share with the world. And so when you put the playlist on, make sure that you're prepared to go kind of all over the place, because you never know what's going to pop up. But it's just really cool for us, almost like journaling. It's like looking back and reflecting. When we hear this song on our playlist, we remember that guest and we remember their story and the encouragement that they were able to give. So share with us the song that you chose and why you chose that.
I love the song, The Goodness of God, because I love the lyrics that say, all my life he has been faithful. At the time, it doesn't always feel like it. Our feelings are not truth. So just looking back, like we just talked about, and saying like, he was faithful. He's always held on to me. I can't make it through that song without crying. I'm not a crier, but it's such a personal song to me. I just love that song.
It's a great song. I love that one. That adds so nicely to our repertoire. So that's really cool. So I really appreciate it. I really appreciate just really the book that you wrote. So how can you tell our listeners how they can find you and how they can find your book? And we'll put the link to your book in the show notes as well, so people can find it.
That's awesome. The book is called Listen, Sister, Finding Hope in the Freak Show of Life. So for obvious reasons that we've already talked about. And you can find it everywhere books are sold. It's on Amazon. It's on Barnes & Noble chapters. It's on christianbook.com. I saw it on walmart.com. That kind of blew me away. So all the places, you can just look it up. My website is tessscott.com. So that's easy. And you can look me up there, see some things that I've written or some places that I've spoken, and connect with me there. Send me a message from there, and I'd love to hear from you. And yeah, that's pretty much everything. You can probably put some connections to my Instagram, Listen Sister Encouragement, or Facebook. There's a group there too. So all the social stuff.
Sure. Yeah, that's great. We'll put that all in the show notes so people can read there and check that out. And also just I recommend the book. I think it was great. I haven't gotten through all of it, but I'm definitely planning on doing that. Like I said, bite-sized pieces, very manageable, easy to read, funny as well, and just really good things. I love the way that you tie little stories together and make a bigger collection of stories, I would say, to that, which is really cool. So I appreciate your time, and hopefully that we'll get to touch base again soon and stay in contact. And I'm excited for people to listen. So thanks again for tuning in and listening with Tess today. And to all of our listeners out there, we appreciate you. We're very thankful for you, and we hope that you have a great rest of your week.